So I fast to tell you that your favourite energy gel in that tiny little sachet that you spent between £2 to £3 on a pop is basically just water, sugar and flavouring. Yep, so while you're dropping between £50 to £70 on sugar for your marathon training block, you could be making a much cheaper, easier, potentially tastier recipe at home for a fraction of the price. And yes, I've actually run the maths on it and it works out to be 1/10 of the price that you're probably going to be paying on gels. I should also mention it's going to be much better for the planet because there's less single-use plastic. So today I'm going to be showing you how to make a variety of different flavoured homemade energy gels that are not only going to be cheaper, easier on your stomach, but are also going to be tailored to your taste buds. And yes, you're still going to be getting that science-backed ratio of 2:1 glucose to fructose that is in most gels. So in most commercial gels, there's normally about 20-25, such as the Morton, which is 25, all the way up to 40 grams of carbohydrate per serving. Now, the key ingredients here that most gels have as the same are going to be water, sugar, and some sort of thickener, such as pectin. That sugar component is normally split between glucose and fructose to provide the two sugar pathways so that if you're fueling with more than 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour, you've got multiple sugars to get through the gut lining. The glucose component that most gels use tends to be maltodextrin. The reason for that is it's technically a starch, so it's not going to actually be written as sugar on the label, but actually it's a little bit less sweet than sugar, which is going to be good if you're giving a big wallop of sugar already. It's going to bring down the sweetness profile. So the difference between gels brand to brand is really going to be the amount of electrolytes they decide to put in, the type of flavouring that they use to flavour their gel, and how thick they're going to be. Also, some gels use sweeteners as well, as if a big wallop of 30 grams of sugar wasn't sweet enough for you. Now, the vast majority of those ingredients, particularly the water and the sugar, are very, very cheap. So what makes these products so expensive? But really, it's the branding. You're paying for their adverts. You're paying for them to be popping up on your Instagram feed and making you want to buy their products. So the reality is the main ingredients cost pennies, so you could be saving a huge bundle by making your own and not entertaining the marketing. Another thing is that because these ingredients are so cheap, you don't even have to be buying them on mass quantities to actually make that saving. So if you're done paying for the marketing and a shiny wrapper, then it could be time to experiment and make your own. Okay, so if you read the ingredients list on most gels, you'll find the primary ingredient is water. The secondary ingredient is normally maltodextrin, and that is your glucose energy source. Maltodextrin is technically a long chain of glucose molecules, so it's technically a starch instead of being a sugar. However, it interacts in the body in very much the same way as sugar. In fact, it's actually got a higher glycemic index than sugar. This is a good thing, as that is exactly what you need from a gel: fast energy. The third ingredient that you tend to find on most gels is fructose, and this is our second energy pathway. So fructose is a monosaccharide and it is the sugar that's found in fruits. Fructose is the sweetest of all the sugars, so it's going to be much sweeter than maltodextrin, and that's one of the reasons I like to make my gels with a 2:1 ratio, because you are getting that second energy source, but actually from a sweetness perspective, it's going to be bringing it down a little bit because you've got less of the really sweet ingredient coming in. The other essential ingredient is pectin. This is a thickener and it comes from apples. It's normally the thickener used in most jams. Now, if you're seeing pectin and thinking, oh God, this is getting a bit complicated, where am I going to find that? You can actually make this recipe without pectin. It's just not going to be quite as thick. But if you prefer your gels to have that little bit of extra mouthfeel, then some pectin is going to be the thing that's going to provide that. And don't worry, I'm going to tell you how much to use. The first ingredient, which I mentioned earlier, is water. However, I would recommend using boiling water. Because that's got more energy in it, it's going to help all of this sugar dissolve a little bit more easily. Now, some brands will be putting electrolytes into their gels, and personally, I recommend against this because I like to separate fueling from hydration. And hydration, you're going to need to have a specific amount of electrolytes depending on the duration that you're running, depending on your personal sweat rate, how much fluid you're replacing, and your amount of sweat sodium. So putting loads of salt into your gels probably isn't particularly helpful, and it would actually make it quite more difficult to get the right amount of sodium coming in. So in our homemade gels, I'm not going to be putting any salt in. What we do want to do though is have something to flavour our gels, and this is where it starts to get a little bit exciting. So once you've got this base recipe locked in that I am going to be sharing with you, there's a few different ways of flavouring it. So one of the ways is actually using something like an extract. So here I've got a peppermint extract, a lemon extract. They both work really well. You could also use whole food, so lemon juice or lime juice, give it quite a nice tang. Or alternatively, if you've just got some squash in the cupboard, then that is going to be super simple and a really easy and effective way to get a wide range of different flavors coming in. When making your own gels, you could also make a caffeinated gel. So I'm gonna try and make a espresso gel, just using a double shot of coffee. I haven't made this one yet, so I'm gonna make it in this video and feed back to you on how it is. Righto, I've teased this recipe enough. Let's get into the golden formula. Okay, so the kettle has just boiled, so I've got my boiling water there ready to go. The next thing is we need to have a set of digital scales. So instead of using things like tablespoons and half measures, we're always gonna try and work in weight, as that's gonna mean it's gonna be the most reproducible way of getting the same recipe. My bowl on the scales, and I'm then gonna measure out my maltodextrin. So here, because I'm going to be making a 90-gram gel, we want 60 grams of maltodextrin to get our 2-to-1 ratio. So I'm popping in here 60 grams, that's 48, boom, 60. And then 30 grams of fructose. So this should be now taking it up to 90, 73, 68, sorry, 86, 87, 88, 91, that'll do. So before you get this wet, the next thing to do is to put your pectin into this carb mixture. I found that if I'm making a 90-gram gel portion, then a 1/4 teaspoon is gonna work really well. Now, obviously, this isn't gonna show up on the scales, which is where having a small teaspoon or 1/4 teaspoon measure is gonna be good. If you don't have a 1/4 teaspoon measure, then get a teaspoon and just put a 1/4. Make sure though that you give this a really good stir, because you want that pectin to be well separated out so that it then works a little bit better when it's binding it. Next thing to do is to weigh out the amount of fluid that you're going to be having. And a simple trick here is to use the same weight of water as you did maltodextrin. So if you're following that 2-to-1 ratio for our 90 grams of carbohydrate, we used 60 grams of maltodextrin. So I'm looking to use 60 grams of water. So make sure I've put this down to 0 and weigh it out. Ooh, upside down, making this a little bit harder. 60, bang on. Then what I want to do, if I was just to pour this mixture into here, that's going to be your most basic unflavoured gel mixture. However, we want to make this a bit more exciting. There's a few options here for you. What I found to work really well is taking 3 sprigs of mint. So take your bunch of mint, grab maybe 3 sprigs and dunk that in there and then just leave it for 5 minutes. Then take the mint out and stir in your carb and pectin mixture really gradually. That gives you a really, really nice mint feel. That's one way. Another way to do it is to use your extracts now. So at this stage, I've got my carb split, I've got my boiling water. I would then be putting some extract into this water. That's gonna help it spread around right into the water so that you get a nice mix. The quantity again, so if I'm using a 90-gram carbohydrate serving, I've just used my 1/4 teaspoon of pectin. I'm gonna use this same measure and put that amount of essence in, essence of extract. So I would use 1/4 teaspoon of peppermint, pour that in, then mix in my carbs. That's gonna give you the flavor of whatever extract you use. I've used lemon before, I've used mint before, they both work really well, but I know you can also use vanilla and it gives it quite a nice taste. Now, one of my favorite ways to flavor a gel is to use real lemon juice, but I've just measured out 30 grams of water here, so I don't wanna now add half a lemon, because that's gonna make it too wet. I'm gonna have too much fluid in there. So actually what I need to do is pour some of this out, pop it back on the scale. Okay, so I've got 19 in there. I'm then gonna squeeze my lemon in. So that half lemon has taken it up to 40. So it's about 20 grams or 20 milliliters in that half lemon. And I'm then gonna top the rest up to 60. So we always want this fluid to be 60. Then I'm gonna give that a swill around, then stir in this mixture. The same rule applies if you're using squash. So instead of pouring your 60 grams of water in and then topping it up with as much squash as you want, you would have too much fluid. It's best to do, depending on how strong you like your squash, you could either use a 3-to-1 or a 2-to-1 ratio. What does all that mean, James? Because we want 60 in here, we could either use 20, so that's gonna be slightly less punchy, or I prefer to go 1-to-1, which is a 30. I found that works really well. So if you go 1-to-1, squash to water, top that up to 60 as always, then mix in all of that sugar. Let me talk you through the mix process now. Don't have to have anything fancy like a whisk. If you're not a home baker, no stress. Here I've just got a fork. So this has the maltodextrin, the fructose and the pectin. This has got 30 milliliters of squash, 30 grams, and 30 grams of water to give our 60. I pour it a little bit at a time, stir it as I go, fork it in. The beauty of using squash is that you can buy a huge range of different flavors, really easy to find in a supermarket. So it's not going to be quite as hot, because you're not using 100% boiling water, but because it's still a little bit warm, it should mix quite nicely. Make sure you stir it right the way around so you don't have any lumps. Now this will probably appear quite wet. That's okay, because the pectin hasn't had time to absorb yet. So yeah, this isn't quite the gel consistency yet, but what I'm gonna do, have a quick taste, pour it into my gel sachet. Personally, I like to use these GU brand. Unfortunately, you can't find these on Amazon, but you can find them on, I think it's Dolphin Fitness. So you can check them out there. Not a sponsored post. These are just the ones I found to work really well. We're then gonna pour it in. So this is our 90 grams of carbohydrate gel. That is a blackcurrant flavor, flavored with squash. What I'm gonna do, pop the lid on that, pop it in the fridge for a few hours, just so that it really cools down, gives the pectin time to set. We'll then have our gel-like consistency. So this is one I'm really excited to try. It's the caffeine one. So I've just made myself a double espresso. I've weighed out a new set of 90 grams of carbohydrate. Make sure I've got exactly 60 grams of fluid. So I'm pouring my espresso into there, and hey, look at that. 61 grams. So a double espresso, about the right amount of fluid for this mixture. I'm then just gonna pour sugar and pectin mixture straight in there. Give it a stir around. Obviously, if you're into your coffee, you can get fancy with the types of bean. So yeah, like I said, haven't tried this one before. I'm very much looking forward to it. Not gonna have this immediately though. My plan is to put this in the fridge, have it tomorrow morning. Because if I have caffeine after 11 AM, I'm not in a good way sleeping. Great color on that, look at that. So this is my double espresso mixture with the 90 grams of sugar, pouring that in. And I'll tell you what, I'm quite looking forward to this one tomorrow morning. So I'm gonna pop that in the fridge and I will feed back tomorrow morning on how that goes down. Now, let's talk about the bit that makes everyone's jaw drop, the price. Okay, so I've done a little bit of maths. 2.5 kilo bag of maltodextrin was £10. So per gram of sugar in there, 0.004 pounds. Fructose was a 1 kilo bag for £9, so 1 gram of fructose is 0.009 pounds. The 24 grams of pectin cost £1.75, so 1 gram of pectin, 0.07 pounds. Now, we used a 90 gram of carbohydrate gel, or we made a 90 grams of carb gel, so we had 60 grams of maltodextrin. So I'm timesing this number by 60 to create 0.24 pounds or 24 pence. 0.009, we used 30 grams of fructose, so I'm timesing that by 30 to get 27 pence. We then used half a gram of pectin, so I'm dividing this by 2 to get 0.03 pounds or 3 pence. 24 plus 27 plus 3 equals 54. So 54 pence for the base ingredients of a 90 gram carbohydrate gel seems pretty cheap, especially when you contrast that to what's out there on the market. So the 190 gram of carb gel that is out there is the Precision Fuel and Hydration, which is currently retailing for £4.99. So 54 pence, £4.99. You can see there how this is a tenth of the price. Now, obviously, what you choose to flavor your gels with, be it squash or extracts, that is going to impact the price. However, because these ingredients are going to really go quite far, they're not dramatically going to increase the price, unless that is you're using expensive coffee and you're using that single shot, because then that probably will get a little bit more expensive. But having said that, still probably cheaper than the gels. So I should probably mention storage and safety. Just keep it in the fridge and maybe use it within 3 to 5 days. And remember, when training your gut, practicing with increasing amounts of carbohydrate is going to be more important than the type of brand that you're using. My bonus tip is it's worth investing in some soft flasks. Now, I haven't factored those into my pricing. They are fairly expensive for what they are. However, you have to make that investment once or twice and you've got those for life, instead of buying the huge amounts of packaging that you're going to be getting in single-use plastic. Personally, I like to use the brand GU for my homemade gels, as I found that I can open them just with my mouth and squirt it in and do it all one-handed. Hello, welcome back. So yesterday I made a whole range of different flavored gels using the different strategies, the whole foods, the extracts and the squashes, as well as my coffee one. So today I'm going to be tasting those. These products have been chilling out in the fridge overnight, and now we're going to look at the texture and the flavor profile. And I'm going to give some commentary on which ones I think you should get started with. So the first one I was interested to try was one using a mixer of just coconut water. So here we go, got a spoon here. So what you might see is that each of these have a bit of a crust on the top, almost like a froth on the top of a Guinness. So don't worry about that, just give that a swirl around. I've obviously made these gels here in glass so that you can see them a little bit more clearly. However, you'll probably have them in your reusable gel flasks. So if you can see the froth there, all you need to do is give that a shake or a squeeze around before having it. So this Vita Coco one, so this was 60 milliliters of coconut water. And what's the taste profile? So bizarrely, the flavor of the coconut doesn't really come through at all. And actually, that's so mild, it's not even much point having that. I really thought that would work as a flavor mixer because being inspired somewhat by the True Fuels gel, which does have some coconut powder in there, and you get a really coconut feel to it. And it's delicious, to be honest with you. One of the best tasting gels I've had. That though has not delivered, so I wouldn't recommend using that as your mixer. The next one, we're starting to look at extract. So I've got a lemon extract here, and I just used 1/4 teaspoon mixed in with the normal gel ratio. What have I done with my spoon? So this one, hopefully there should be a bit of a lemon flavor coming through. Gonna really mix in there. As you can see, this one's slightly wetter. That's lemony. You definitely get the lemon coming through. It's not overwhelming, almost a lemon cake kind of taste. I really like that. I think that works really well. Now I'm quite excited for this one, which was the one that was mixed with 30 milliliters of lemon juice, half a lemon squeezed in with 30 milliliters of boiling water. Here we go. Swirling this one around. Again, quite a wet texture, this one. Wow. So the reason I like this one is because you know when you have crepes on pancake day and you have lemon and sugar, that is the exact taste that you get from this gel. It's so natural, the lemon comes through, it's so sharp. I would recommend having this one soon after making it. So this isn't one that you want to store and have in the fridge for 3 days. I would recommend making this one and then having it either within the couple of hours after making it, so just after the pectin's set, or immediately the next day, as we don't want that flavor profile to mellow at all. Sharp lemon is delicious. This is the peppermint. So, peppermint comes through, you're getting mint, you're getting Kendall mint cake vibes, really nice, robust peppermint flavor. The sweetness is there. And again, it shows that using extracts at the right sort of dosages is just a really easy way to flavor gels and quite a cost efficient way too, because you're not really using hardly any at all. I was really interested to try the sprigs of mint. So this next one, we used 60 milliliters of boiling water, but we steeped. So I put the 2 sprigs of mint in and then just poured the boiling water over the top to try and release the flavors of mint into that boiling mixture before then mixing in all the sugar. How is this one in taste and how does it compare with the extract? So that's a lot more mellow. It's a lot less toothpaste hit from the peppermint side of things, but it feels more real. And I mean, that's probably pretty obvious an explanation as it is a real flavoring. But if you like to have real or wholesome tasting gels, ones which aren't boff artificial flavor, that could work really nicely for you. Then we move on to the blackcurrant flavored gel. Now this is probably a really good starting place if you're just getting into flavoring and making your own made gels. This is the one I've got in my reusable pouch, and what I'm going to do is show you the consistency here. So I'm going to open up and pour some of this out. So if you can see that, it does run a little bit, but it's very much that gel consistency, similar to most gels, I think. So I think we've got the pectin level right. Let's have a taste. I mean, wow. It's very sweet, much sweeter than the others. And I think that's because the blackcurrant will have a sweetener in it. So you're getting double whammies of sweetness on the sugar that's in there and also the sweetener. If you like squash, that's probably a big win, as you do just get a massive hit of squash on the flavor profile. And actually, if you like a sweeter gel, then this could work really neatly for you. Again, it's potentially a really good starting place because you can get these in loads of different flavors and it's going to be really easy to mix in, potentially at a lower dose than what I've used. This mixture is a 50-50, this and water, so it's going to be quite punchy, but maybe using the third or even a quarter to have slightly more mellow taste, and it will also bring down the sweetness profile. The one though that I'm super interested in trying is my espresso one. So this was a double espresso to provide the 60 milliliters of fluid and then the normal mixture of glucose, fructose and pectin. I'm also going to dribble this out on here so you can see texture. Okay, so that looks a little bit thicker than the other one. Potentially I just added a bit more pectin. Let's go for the flavor, and don't worry, I am going to be going for a run after this. Oh, My goodness. So I don't normally drink espresso. I normally have my coffee as an Americano or latte, and that is punchy. However, having that on a run, because the combination of the sugar and that coffee flavor, and also the caffeine that's going to be kicking in the sort of next 20-30 minutes, that is going to be pure rocket fuel. I'm actually quite excited to have that on a run because I know I'm quite sensitive to caffeine, and that will just, I will be flying on that. Absolutely delicious. If you're into coffee, please, please, please give this one a go and let me know what you think in the comments. If you're just getting into it, I would avoid this one. I'd potentially experiment with some extracts, or if you like sweet, going in with the squash. So hopefully what all of this has shown you is that you don't need overpriced sachets to effectively fuel your runs. You just need carbohydrate, some form of flavoring, and a plan that's specific to you and your running needs. So please have a go with any of these recipes, come up with your own, post them in the comments. I'll be really keen to hear from you. So hopefully all of this has taught you that you don't need overpriced sachets to effectively fuel your running. All you really need is some sugar, maltodextrin and fructose, as well as a bit of pectin and a range of different flavorings to make your own gels. Please feel free to experiment with these recipes, make them your own, and if you come up with new ones, please post them in the comments so that we can all learn from you. Also, if you found this helpful, feel free to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and maybe tag a friend who needs to make that coffee gel. And if you prefer to have an unflavored gel, then check out my latest video, how to make your own gel at home.